Hello, welcome back to the Bright Founders Talk podcast from Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. My name is Chris, and today's guest is someone who has done everything from digital marketing to program and service optimization, and is now in control of 3 thriving businesses. Bob Sybydlo, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Excellent. Well, like always, we've got some quick fire questions I want to throw at you. What's the best way to start the day?
Best way is coffee right here.
That's perfect.
I'm good.
Excellent. And what's your favorite non-tech way to relax?
So for me personally, if I just kind of move over, you'll see my guitar sitting there. I'm just a musician, so that to me is therapy. It's very therapeutic. Just to kind of just jam out, whatever it is. I'm not going to claim that I'm any sort of great guitar player, but to me, it's my therapy, and I genuinely enjoy it.
Is that after work, or you do it before work, or you sort of mix it in between?
Mix it in between. Just sometimes you need to step away and just take a few seconds, and just have just riffs just a little bit. It sort of helps change your perspective.
And finally, what was your dream job when you were growing up?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think if I can look at one common thread from when I was a kid and, being asked that question by my parents, by my teachers, and kind of as you grow up, I've always wanted to be creating something, right? Whatever it may be. Well, whether we were creating like roll your dice kind of board games as kids, or in high school, we were dreaming about making video games, and then, now software, whatever it is, making something that didn't exist before. I find that so exciting.
Nice. All right. Brilliant. So there was no pressure, growing up, like, oh, you have to go into this or that. It was kind of you open to choose what you wanted.
Well, no, there was actually quite a bit of pressure. And my mom worked in the education system her entire career. So basically, I would be told, like, you need to go to school, you need to get a job visa. There's an order to things. That's how you succeed. And I mean, sure, it was absolutely great advice, but I never made sure I kind of went all in and didn't leave enough room for sort of dreaming and creating whatever.
Right. All right. Now, it's, as you mentioned already, but I did see it on your profile about playing the guitar or being a musician, and also an author, right? So I just wondered, could you tell us a little bit more about that? Do you play any other instruments, or maybe what have you written? And does that sort of, that creative side come into your business or the business world at all?
I absolutely. So if I showed you around this room, there I have my keyboard over here, my speakers over here. So, I've never really left that world. When I was after high school, when I got post-secondary, I joined a band. We did 2 albums. We did quite a bit of touring, kind of all over the place. So I got a real feel of that. And, my dad gave me that piece of advice, which is, name your price. When are you going to stop this and kind of, rejoin the real world? And I said, okay, I think when I'm 24, 25, then it'll be like, I've had enough. And sure enough, that time came, and I got a really good job, sort of thing that was kind of in my field of study, something that really inspired me and got me excited. So that felt really good. And then plus I was making money. I was getting this paycheck because there isn't music for aspiring artists. There isn't money for aspiring artists. So that was great. And that let me buy better gear and this and that. But so then that kind of went from, that became a passion project, a hobby, that sort of thing. But, being exposed to that world, you meet a lot of eccentric personalities, and you meet a lot of people who are, in marketing, and who will look at you or look at anyone and just say like, okay, this is what I think you should do, what you should focus on, how I can sell this. And you start getting exposed to this, that like the music, you dream about it being great and, this and that, but that's not the whole picture, right? Because bad music, which is a subjective thing, if it's marketed well, can be great. And some music is designed, just since we're just on the topic of music, is written for different reasons, right? Some is just written to be sold, or whatever it may be. So you just start understanding that like it's more than just like one way to sort of succeed, or one way to sort of do what it is you want to do. And it just gets your mind thinking. And then when I entered the digital marketing world, and I was just realizing, oh, there's a lot of similar concepts here. Like I understand how this works. The business aspect of creativity and the business aspect of that is just as important, arguably, than the creativity itself, in completely different ways, and in ways that they don't, like yin yang, kind of don't mesh together, but operate in balance of each other.
Quite interesting, coming from that side of the creative industry or music or whatever it could be. Do you ever, because something we'll touch on later about your world or the world you're in, marketing or digital marketing, do you ever draw any influence from maybe how music is marketed and use it for a product which is not related to that, where it could be, I don't know, it could be a book or shoes or an optimization product or something?
So absolutely. I would say, so marketing and let's say business, right, as well, right? So the idea of how do I take this and make this marketable, right? How do I, using the music industry, we would see there's the idea of the albums coming out, new album drops this summer, whatever it may be. And then you'll have the LP, or you'll have the EP, just 3 records, 3 songs. And then you have the single, right? So it's just, we're finding these different ways of marketing the same sort of thing. So there's this evolution that sort of occurred there. And, that is just as dynamic. I feel it's the same thing as marketing a movie, or marketing a product, or marketing anything. You find different unique ways to sort of market what it's all about, how to keep people engaged in that product, because music, just as anything, will sort of stagnate over time, or people get used to it. There's only so many times you can listen to a song or whatever it may be. And you can't listen to a song every day, right, for going on. So you need to keep things fresh, you need to keep things moving. And that sort of idea is extremely relevant in digital marketing and business and whatever it may be, right? So like, you got this one thing, now what? You're not going to be a one-hit wonder product, a one-hit wonder musician, whatever it may be.
All right, interesting. So especially, going back to your studies before you started these 3 businesses, or your career, you were working in, or you were studying computers or tech in general, right? So I just wondered, is it something you've always been interested in?
Well, computer science was really where it started from. That's what I went to school for. And I guess I got really into that in high school, where I got this idea of, we had like programming classes and got exposed to networking and these sorts of ideas. And I just got excited, like looking at, how does this work? How can you use this software to do something really interesting? I always really enjoyed that. And then that sort of, then that exposed me to things like coding and HTML development and database management and low-level computer programming. You study all these things. And through that process, I got a sense and a taste of what I liked and what I didn't like and what I wanted to do. And as I got older, because now I'm, kind of in my late teens, I'm in 20, I'm 21, I'm starting to think about like, okay, getting a job, working, like what can I see myself doing? I have this education, I have this interest in these things. I never went all in on music, right? Because I'm just like, I have a need for, I want to be secure so I can have a place where I can kind of springboard ideas off of, do these things off of. So, that was always there. And as I sort of got older, sort of thing, I started realizing there's stuff here I really like doing, and there's stuff here I really don't like doing. And being aware of those 2 things helped me be more successful in the things that I like doing. Help me gravitate towards the things I like to do.
Looking at your studies, did you find it to be, because as someone who seems to be quite hands-on or quite innovative and in that area, did you find that your studies were practical enough for you, or was it too theory-based?
That's a somewhat difficult to answer. I mean, the practicality of it is I think it's so important. And while in different schools you'll study a lot of the theory, I suppose the point of studying the theory is to understand how to think through current problems, or know where you've come from to know where you're going. All these things they're extremely important. But I think if you remove practicality from it, then you're just going to be a deep thinker and not a strong worker, an effective worker, or someone who can hit the ground running with a project. So that's a bit of a disservice. I think having the practical aspect, and the school I went to was great at that, and also gave me an opportunity. We did co-op terms between semesters. So for 4 months of the year between semesters, I was employed somewhere.
Oh, wow.
And, so I'm, like 20 years old, I'm working for a major telecom, doing small little project, but it was real world. It was stuff that people depended on. There were deadlines. I had a manager who was, watching my work and telling me to test things. And, you just realize that the education system and actually working are different. You want to be prepared for those things. So having that ability to do that work experience was the most effective, best thing that I could have done for myself.
Yeah, I think yes. Yeah. Sounds very interesting that they have that sort of program where you can
it was really great.
Or even network, perhaps, kind of find new people. And when you finished your studies, what was it like in your first few positions then after you left? Were there any skills that you picked up that maybe you still use today?
It's funny because I'm trying to find the best way of wording this, but when you're studying at school, you have assignments you have to do, you have lectures you have to attend, there's homework you have to do, whatever it may be. But you're hanging out with the people in your program. And we were just like a gang. We went everywhere together. We ate together, studied together, did our assignments together, this and that. And we would play with the technology. We started learning, C plus coding, right? Just basics. So we're like, oh, let's make a silly game, or let's make a silly application that does this little thing. And it's through that experimentation and playing that we're just sort of riffing off each other and laughing that I learned the most effective. I gained the most effective tools that I immediately used when I started working.
Okay, so just kind of like experimenting, trial and error, and then
exactly right. Just and for fun, you're playing. It's a very healthy thing for your brain. It's like a great way to raise dopamine levels, right? Just playing, right? Kids do that, right? As adults, like, do you play? Like, do you doodle? That's playing, right? You play with some anything, right? Just play. It's so good for your brain, and that's.
I'm just curious with the companies you have now, before we jump into them, with the people you hire, especially any young adults, do you go through that same sort of experience? You get them to try and error things on purpose? Do you sort of push them in that direction rather than, okay, we need results? You're more like, okay, well, I don't mind if you fail as long as you're kind of testing the waters.
I'll give you two responses on that. So there are times when, if we're hiring, we're looking at new talent, we need a job done, or we need someone to kind of make sure this work gets done, and completed. So, there's a time for play and there's time for work, of course. But when I'm interviewing, or if I'm, especially when I'm interviewing developers or whatever it may be, I really appreciate when they come in and show me, here's something I'm working on, or something I've experimented with, something I'm playing with, right? Developers are specific. You can't relate this to other skill sets. But I mean, if someone just likes to sit there and just, I want to learn this, I want to try this, I'm hungry to play around with it, I find that they are really effective candidates. They have been, in my experience, and I really enjoy working with people because they're not afraid to try new things, or to be scrappy when needed, whatever it may be. So I think that is an aspect that builds great employees, great character, but it's not the only aspect.
For you personally, could you share the pivotal moment when you decided, okay, I want to do my own thing, I want to start my own business?
Well, for me, it was fairly straightforward, because at the very end of my program, before we graduated, the last thing we had to do was we had to work either individually or with as a group to design a functioning website that could take data input and produce some sort of output of that data. So we basically created, at the time, now this is like 2002, 2003 sort of thing. So we kind of created something similar to what LinkedIn is now. I'm not saying that, I created first, nothing like that. We created just this idea of, for skills and tradespeople, I'm a bricklayer, I'm a gardener sort of thing, to be able to say, like, I do this stuff personally, professionally, I live in this area. If you want to find someone local who does those things, sort of thing. So we created this sort of website. And we did everything, right? So from building the actual website to planning of the content, the user does the UX, the CX, the logo, the name, like just sitting down in the cafeteria, the school cafeteria. I'll never forget this day. And we all had our lunches. We're all just sitting there writing words down. And it was words that we liked that the website could be called. We liked this word, didn't like this word. And then just of iterations and words crossed out, and, was so exciting and so much fun. And then we just arrived at, that name. And I still own the .com. I'll never give it up, because it's like it was my first child that still lives at home, basically, and, didn't go anywhere, but sort of thing. But that experience was just like, oh, that was so exciting. I would rather work on that than sleep. I think about it when I'm trying to sleep. I think about it since I woke up, sort of thing. Doing these things. What are we going to build next, sort of thing. Was I'm like, this is what I want, what I need.
I think that's not something that's common. I don't think it's something that is that common with young people, as you're describing in that age, that you were hungry to start a business in that sense. Were you just sort of lucky the friends you had around you, or was it more that you put yourself into that kind of position where you wanted like-minded people, or was it your family that kind of influenced you? Okay, start a business, it's great.
You know what? No, it was like we had the opportunity. It was the assignment, right? The assignment was, right, we have to create this thing. Okay, so let's do that. And then I had this great idea, like, oh, what if we had this? And just from my experience is like, oh, you need help doing something. You want to redo your back garden. I keep using that example, right? And I was like, okay, this could work. So I'm like, okay, I'm not a graphic designer. I need a graphic designer. So I found someone in the class who was a great graphic designer and said, "Hey, I got this great idea. You want to work on it together?" And I said, "Sure." And I was like, "Okay, I'm not a great programmer. I'm a less than mediocre programmer. So let's find a great programmer." And then I found a great programmer in the class and said, "Hey, I got this great idea. Do you want to like work on this?" And we all sort of came together and designed it sort of. So it was that, right? Knowing like what my strengths were, what my weaknesses were, and then, perhaps offsetting their capabilities, right? Where you might have someone who's an introvert, doesn't want the attention, just wants to sit, do the work, go home. I can complement that person by being, sort of the extrovert, the one who gets excited, who kind of can sell the idea, this and that, right? So that sort of complement worked, but it was just being aware of what I could do and what I couldn't.
And then you came up with the idea for the first company that you started was Reverie, right? If I'm
right. Yeah. So Reverie.digital, the whole purpose of that was that kind of came on as I was already working with many enterprise level businesses, working with, many Fortune companies, right? We're deep into all that work. And what I was noticing is just there's so many smaller businesses and not-for-profits and charities. They're doing such important, meaningful work that just cannot afford to bring in talent or bring in the resources to, build the websites they need or get the reach they need, this and that. And I just thought like, oh, what a shame. Like I have this understanding of how these things work. How can I help these people? And it really just started off from, just meeting some people who worked for a charity at the time. And they're just, were explaining these very rudimentary things that they're like, oh, I wish I could do this. It'd be great if we could do this. And I'm like, oh, that's so simple. Let's do something. Right. And it's one of those, you don't know what you don't know, right? They're focused on running the charity and running the business and doing what they do. They need help with these aspects. So I wanted to create, some avenue for being able to assist them in a way that was sort of meaningful, that they can be charged sort of accordingly, because, over time, a lot of these things are getting easier. Like developing an email program, an email journey has got easier because the tools have become more accessible and require less background knowledge on how HTML coding works, for example, to build an email. So as these tools have become more accessible and this and that, just how to weave all that together into a functioning technological backend was something that, I began sort of doing for a lot of companies. And then reusing these patterns, right? Going to someone even who runs it's a shop that they do tarot card readings and, energy work and all these things. I'm like, hey, you know what? You need a calendar system so people can book appointments and, whatever it may be. And this is nice and easy stuff. And, I was very transparent with them, but like, this isn't difficult, but I could do this for you. So it's done right. And, I have this experience and all this. And then you sort of lift and leverage that pattern to the next thing. And it's people who build terrariums and, who ship parts for and soil and all that for the terrariums and all this sort of stuff. And it's the same sort of thing, just sort of moving along. And it's very rewarding, very exciting. You meet just such wonderful, interesting people, and just makes you even stronger with your acumen and when you start strategizing the solution, larger and larger projects.
I thought it was really interesting that it did mention you like to help small businesses and charities. Mm-hmm. I thought it might be something else related to maybe working with smaller businesses is easier in terms of communication. There's less red tape, perhaps. Charities, maybe there's an altruistic side of things.
Oh, absolutely. Because there's no, I'm trying to find the right word, but when you're working with the charity, smaller businesses and all that stuff, it's very scrappy. It's very real. There aren't these layers of politics, especially in large organizations, and tempers and all this sort of stuff, right? People are just saying like, what is going to be the best for the business, right? It's just raw work, and it's so much more effective. Things move so much faster. Not to say that red tape isn't important, especially, I work with a lot of financial institutions, and, you can't skip these things, right? But when you are working without these things, projects fly out the door and get completed. It's really something.
Yeah, it must be more satisfying. Well, in different ways. I also saw that something was interesting on the website, on Reverie's website, was that you're developing AR and VR. And I just wondered, what is the future of that? How would that work?
There's no question that that's just going to be coming more and more into the world. There's so many people that are talking about it, trying to develop worlds and places for that. Meta obviously is a great example of that. But I think that, especially looking at, I have young children, and they're so captivated by VR and like the capabilities of VR and what it could be. I think it's just so interesting. So the idea that, as we saw with digital marketing or with social, let's use social as a good example. As social blew up onto the scene, everybody got into social, how products were marketed generally, not always on a commercial or a billboard or in an email even. We're now seeing, Facebook posts and like social posts and all this sort of different ways we have influencers now. So that started evolving, right? This sort of branch of marketing. So I think with VR and all that, like that's just going to evolve and it's just going to develop. And where I imagine it's going to, one of the places where it can go is just the idea of, living sort of borderless, right? Because I could put on my VR headset, this and that, and I can go walk around Kyoto. And of course, I'm not physically there, but I'm virtually there, in a manner of speaking sort of thing. And, it's real, not real, this and that, it is what it is. But it really comes down to making your imagination even more visceral and even more sort of in front of you, whatever that may be, right? You can want to drive race cars, you can do skydiving, whatever it may be. And it just brings you a little bit closer to that experience. Not saying that us as humans are, naturally we're like organic creatures that need to physically move around this and that. But I think it is an evolution of the mind, of consciousness sort of thing. Same thing with AI, with all these types of things. It's just an evolution of work and how we sort of accomplish tasks.
Because I was thinking, especially with helping smaller businesses, it could streamline the training program in terms of, you pop a headset on, you leave someone there for, I don't know, an hour or however it works, and then you come back and they're fully trained in this magical world in my head. But is that kind of the way how it would work with businesses in that sense, or is it more about enhancing the customer's experience, or both? Or
I would definitely say both. I think that's a great example. I know I've had some conversations about how it can be used for training. I found that like some businesses have been reluctant to be like, that's just fake, right? It's not right sort of thing versus. But I mean, product marketing, obviously, if you can like really see that car and walk around that car and you're getting into it and out of it sort of thing, it doesn't change the fact that you're not actually touching the car or driving the car sort of thing. But just from I want to see it, right? I want to see and look under this and that. And especially, throughout the pandemic, new cars and all that stuff became harder to find. There was less stock, less inventory. So, I don't have one here. I can get one for you in a couple of months, but, here's the VR sort of thing with it, right? That might be kind of interesting. I still think that it'll really augment the idea of playing, right? And the idea of like making products like more exciting, right? And, designing products that are specifically digital, right? That can be experienced only in this sort of pretend VR world, right? Sort of thing where these things can kind of go. But from a training's perspective, I mean, where I think it would be interesting is, you can design it for people who have different ways of learning, right? Because designing an online course, right? It's 1 hour, right? Like, what if there's people who learn different? Some people are hands-on learners, some people need examples, right? This and that. Even experiences, right? Customer comes into the shop, like, well, I want a customer who comes in who's volatile, right? Who comes into the shop, right? And this person is really upset about something that went wrong, sort of thing. And you can make that experience much more realistic in a way, or much more dynamic. So I think that would be an interesting way to sort of level up these capabilities and these things that we do.
Yeah, that sounds really, really cool, actually. After that, later on, you became involved in ENVERTAdigital?
Yes. So that's where I'm working. Now I am, we're a strategic technologist consultant. We do technology consulting, we do deliverability management, we do campaign operations, a very broad set of things that we do technically. And the idea, like a lot of what I'm doing there is, we handle, I have team members that do program operations, quality assurance, development, this and that. But, okay, you have this new tool you just purchased, pick any tool, Salesforce, whatever you purchase this tool, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to use it? Hey, this new capability just came out. Here's how we can test it with a new business, or here's how it can complement what you're doing over here. So strategically designing roadmaps for your technology specifically, right? To enable capabilities and enable and enhance what you're doing, solve business objectives, all those things is really how I sort of bring those innovative, that innovation, that sort of entrepreneurial sort of spirit into what we do.
Do you feel then, like, for example, the hot topic at the moment, AI, well, for the average Joe like myself, it's something new, maybe not for you. But do you feel like a lot of companies are starting to incorporate it in their companies or their systems, but they actually don't know what they're doing with it?
Oh, completely. Just everyone's like, we need to bring in AI, period. So how, right? So that I've done a lot of work on that front of the how, right? Of how and why you would bring AI in. And, do you want to talk about that for a moment or like, yeah.
Yeah, if you...
I'd love to, because I just stop me because I'll get lost in it. Yeah, really when like AI kind of chat GPT, generative AI, let's start with like Gen AI kind of came out and everyone's saying like, we need to do this because this is the next thing. So many people jumped on that bandwagon, quickly realized they're like, okay, what am I doing with this? How has it made me sell my product or, finish my job, whatever it may be? So that wall happened quite quickly. So that's when, the need for technology strategy sort of really developed. And what we were doing a lot of is saying like, okay, let's think of Gen AI as improv. You're on stage, and the whole foundation of improv comedy is yes and. I can throw any crazy thing at you, and you'll be like yes and riff on that. So just riffing on these ideas to be able to generate a lot more content, right? A lot more options, and help you think through and work through problems. So earlier this year, we did a conference in Vegas, and we used AI. We did a demonstration at our booth. We had a booth up, and we used AI to create personality tests, right? So you have a little form, enter a few details about yourself, your birth date. So now I have your zodiac sign, your favorite color, favorite animal, just 5 things really fast. And we would use AI to sort of, group that together and find commonalities between people who have these sorts of characteristics. And we use Gen AI to sort of profile people for what kind of products might they, not what kind of products they gravitate towards, what about products they would enjoy, right? So, you or I really like mobile phone. We want to buy a mobile phone, but based on my profile, I prefer hearing how sturdy the product is, how it won't break, viruses won't get me, it'll always work. It's very dependable, right? Whereas maybe the way it would market to you would be, it's super exciting, it has all the latest stuff, look at these cool colors, you can do whatever you want with it, chat with your friends, for example, right? So same product, but Gen AI is saying like, identified us both as 2 different types of marketable consumers, or of marketable stereo. And, this idea of like, how can I then take my brand messaging and just sort of tailor it a little bit to my likes and tailor it differently to your interests, sort of thing, or what you would gravitate towards when it came to the exact same product that we're both looking at simultaneously.
So just looking at a more tailored marketing, kind of like social media, where they, now we have specific ads that the cookies, have found out what you're searching for and so on. Okay, that's quite, it's very interesting. Just about one final question, just running out of time, but one I want to ask you about other companies, or what you would like to know is if you could shadow any CEO or business owner or entrepreneur for a few weeks, who or what company would it be and why?
Okay, I would say 90s Jeff Bezos, right? Just something like that, just because he had this, and not to say he still does, and there's no question, right? But, that and into the 2000s, of course, when like, that's when I was like just getting into the whole technology world sort of thing, just his confidence and his belief in himself. And I found that quite appealing, that really drew you in. It's just like, he has this perspective, and he'll find out in a couple months whether that was right or that's wrong or whatever, but he has this confidence of, this is how we're going to come at it. This is how we feel it's going to work. And I believe in my business and what we're doing. And that's what you're going to experience here, sort of thing. And you enter that sort of world as you sort of, as Amazon grew and grew and grew. So that was when it was really inspiring to me. And I suppose as I entered the sort of corporate world, and, all the companies that we've worked with, you meet so many different people, and you start absorbing through osmosis so many different types of things that you find work that don't work. But I remember that was my first sort of like CEO hero poster on the wall. It's like, wow, look at how he's, how he's confident in this and that.
Yeah, I mean, wow, he's very, very successful. So it's a good person to choose. Brilliant. Well, talking about success, we wish you all the best with your 3 companies at the moment, and thanks for giving us your time.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much.